Okay, first, here's a statement, and we would like to know your opinion about this. The highest goal of green architecture is to be fully sustainable. Is there really a thing as full sustainability in terms of the built environment?
So, if we going, kung alamin natin ano, yung history ng green architecture, kailan pa siya na-develop? It was actually started during the 1960s, according to my reference, kung hindi ako nagkakamali. And slowly nag-build up siya ng 1970s to ngayon. Fully blown na yung green architecture. Okay? Now, the purpose of green architecture is because there are designers in the past realized that the globalization that has happened, especially with the introduction of postmodern architecture, industrial revolution, the invention of cars. So during that time, no, they did not realize the environmental impact ng transportation and the globalization we had. And then slowly, na-realize na problema in terms of design dahil meron adverse environmental impact. Na-realize na natin dito na na-develop yung word na green architecture wherein you consider the environmental impact of the design to the environment. Anyway, the goal of the green architecture is actually to minimize as much as possible the effect of building environment. I think in my lecture earlier about carbon emission. Of course, buildings, they use energy, they consume power, and of course, they emit carbon emission. Okay? Ngayon, there are other components in sustainability that in green architecture. Hindi ko nabanggit kanina, green architecture kasi focuses on the building design. But if we assume that green architecture is the main focal point of sustainability, I think that is wrong. Kasi ang sustainability kasi encompasses everything. In fact, according to studies, it's okay na mawala nga tayong mga tao. The planet will still survive. Pero yun na nga, of course, we need to make sure that how we design our community can create and support other life. Ito yung hindi natin na-consider architecture. Especially, yung tinatawag natin equality. For example, if you want to create a sustainable community, you will incorporate the rich and the poor living in the same environment. This is not the case in our country. Kung saan, socialized housing, they are located at the outskirts of Metro Manila, while middle income housing development, they are situated nearest the central business district. That alone is not very sustainable. And this is not addressed in architecture because this that mixing of different social classes in one community is more of urban planning. Okay? I think this is just one of the issues that if we really want to create a sustainable community, we need to look beyond the building. Okay, we also need to incorporate other life form in how we design our community. I think I mentioned earlier that we're going to design a built environment. We need to consider life form, the bees, the pollinating insect, the birds, and other life form. And I think this is not addressed in green architecture. Of course, magpo-provide tayo ng plants, landscaping, but those elements, they serve the human function. No, they really do not address the ecosystem. It's really supported the other life forms. Yun yung masasabi ko.
If we're only talking about green architecture, for example, and associated with sustainability, then you're not necessarily looking at uh, architecture within the context of, let's say, the bigger picture, which is, for example, architecture plays a role in society, for example, and the matter of sustainability applies more to that. So if you associate, for example, sustainability to development of a society, and Louis was able to elaborate on that very well. Uh, Sustainability then might not be the only consideration for green architecture. I think there's a discussion already, or part of the list of questions, for example, that has to do with the definition of sustainability or sustainable development. And the Brundtland Commission actually already establishes the definition for that. And that has to do with being able to meet the needs of the current generation and allowing future generations to meet their own needs. Because if you set it in that context, then I don't think that you're only looking at sustainability for green architecture, but society in general. But that also emphasizes, or again, as architect Ronnie Yumang also mentioned earlier, you're putting man in the center of all these things when what is important is that we see ourselves in association or in the context of other species. So if you're looking at, let's say, sustainable development, it should not only be current generation of people living now or having an anthropocentric perspective, but that we consider all the needs of other species as well.
Of course, what we want in green architecture is to save on energy, water, our sight, our health, good indoor environmental quality, and the use of materials. And the goal is, of course, to preserve it not only for our generation, but for the future generations to come. So I would have to agree that it is one of the goals and possibly the highest goal of architecture, green architecture.
In addition to what the panelists are discussing earlier, no, I would like to point out. I would like to point out the very reason why we have these regenerative systems thinking. Okay, moving forward, sustainability. Sustainability, as we know, as defined by Mr. Rex Butter kanina, no, we are trying to save our resources. We are trying to be efficient on the usage of our resources. But what are we going to do in the year in 3 decades or so? No, by 2050, the world population will balloon to 9 billion. All right, and if we are only saving for the resources that we've been discussing earlier for the sustainability, no, where are we going to use the rest of the material that we will need 3 decades from today? No, that means that there will be scarcity of resources already, and that's the reason why regenerative architecture systems thinking is here to be able to replenish what we are supposed to use by the year 3 decades or so. No, and that's the very purpose of regenerative system thinking. It's not only about anticipating, or it's not only about thinking about saving our resources for today. So green model and sustainable model is in co-collaboration with regenerative systems thinking. Both are important schools of thoughts, no, because it cannot outlive each of them, no. Dapat sabay sila, dapat pareho sila. Uh, while we are consuming, we need to replenish what we are consuming. No? Dapat papalitan natin yan. And we need to be conscious on the materials that we are using. As I have mentioned earlier, um, concrete and aggregates are limited resources. No? And that's the reason why we need to start right now as architects, as you, as future architects. No? You need to understand what materials are we going to use in the future that will enable us to relief, no, give a relief on these extracted resources, which is very, very important. And that's the reason why um, uh, correspondingly, dapat we need to also use the strategies of indigenous wisdom, ecological wisdom, and the frugal innovations. No? Because we cannot always live uh, on a bigger scale all the time. Especially this pandemic, no? It's a very big realization for all of us that hindi natin makakain yung magandang building natin, no? Hindi tayo mabubuhay dun sa magandang building lang, no? And that alone is very significant for our architecture to contribute on the ecosystem's health, no? Because when our architecture contributes to the ecosystem's health, that means stability of human existence as well.